Do you love walking on the beach and collecting shells and you get them home and you're not quite sure what to do with them? Well, stay tuned. Hi, my name is Leslie and welcome to Happy Tuesday, where we do crafts and DIY and home decor and more. Today I have for you 5 super cute ideas and 1 bonus if you stay to the very end. Things that you can do with those shells to keep those vacation memories alive. Now, don't forget to stick around until the very end and I'll have a hint on next week's projects. So, let's get started. And here's the pile of shells that I started with. You can see there's a little mixture of all kinds of things. Some coral that was washed up on the beach, some sand dollars, some shells, a few stones, just a whole variety of things from my vacations. And that will bring us to project number 1. I think this turned out adorable. So I just took a frame that I had bought on clearance. You could use something that you already have around the house. And I cleaned it all up, and then I just took some white chalk paint and I just gave it a quick dry brushing just to kind of brighten up some of the areas and mute some of that blue and just give it more of a beachy feel. Felt like it kind of looked like seaweed grass kind of stuff around the frame. And so once I get done with that and have it the way I want it, then we will move on to placing the shells. Now I chose to place the shells into just one side of the frame, and then this would be just a cute way to display shells that you got from a certain trip, and you could have a picture developed that you actually took on that trip, maybe something on the beach to remind you of where you were at the time, and then it's a sweet little memory. You could also make a really nice gift for somebody maybe that went on the trip with you, and something to help them remember the trip by. Now, full disclosure here, I did kind of pre-choose before I started shooting the video which shells I wanted to use with each project, just so that you wouldn't have to watch the struggle that it took me to kind of pick out the ones that I wanted to use. So I had all 5 projects kind of already pre-chosen, but I will tell you this. Even after you picked it and you put it on there and you took a picture of it and you tried to replace it back where it was, and then you decided to rearrange things because it wasn't quite exactly where you wanted it. Sometimes, it turns out just slightly different than what you started with. But after I got everything kind of where I wanted it, then I just took some hot glue and glued it in the places that I had kind of pre-selected for everything, and kind of here I am. I'm actually kind of rearranging a little bit, and I ended up with some spaces that I didn't intend on ending up with in the beginning. And so what I did before I actually took the final project picture was some of these shells still had some sand in them, and so I kind of poured that sand onto into a container, and then I put some Mod Podge on the little areas. You can see there was a couple little areas, and here's where you can see I put some sand and it was mixed with a little bit of shells and just a little bit of Mod Podge and filled in those areas. And I think this just turned out so sweet, and I love it, and I hope you do too. So that will bring us to, remember to like this, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and click that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. I'm going to tell you, this is probably my favorite project today. So I bought one of these Hello Summer on clearance a few years ago at Michael's. No, it was at Hobby Lobby. And you can get them super cheap. And that Hello Summer just sands off like a champ. And then you have this beautiful heavy duty wood round to be able to use for this project. If you don't have one of these, then, you know, grab any wood round, or you could also make this project on a rectangular piece or a square piece. But we're going to start with this wood round, and before I get going, I'm going to kind of measure off where I think the center is. And I had 3 of these sand dollars that pieces had been either chipped out of over the years, or that I found them not completely whole. And so I thought this would be a great way to display them and make it appear as if they were the whole sand dollar. So this is going to be the center of my piece, and we are going to be doing a new technique that I haven't done on my channel before today, which is wood burning with scorch paste. So right now I am just trying to lay out all the shells and figure out where they're going to sit. Now that little piece of sponge, I actually found that dried up just the way you see it, sitting in some rocks way up on a beach, and so I thought it was obviously something that was already past its life, and I think it makes the sweetest addition to this little project. So I am organizing my shells kind of in a circle with one main point at the top, the bottom, the right, and the left. And that will be my north, south, east, and west. And we are going to have a sweet little saying down at the bottom. So you want to leave some room as you're putting in your circle. Leave some room at the bottom for the little saying. To do the next part of the project, I printed the saying and the north, south, east, west on Cricut's stencil vinyl, and I am cutting out my pieces, and then you will actually reverse weed this. So instead of taking the outside, you're going to take the inside. And so there's my N for north, and I didn't use any transfer tape or transfer paper on this beginning section just to do the north, south, east, and west, because it was just, you know, one little piece. And so I'm gonna stick that up at the north, make sure it's kind of centered, eyeballed it really well, and it fits in with the shells. And then we're going to do east and west and end with south. Once I've got those on, then I'm going to go ahead and weed out. Again, it's a reverse weed on the saying, and I cut it into 2 separate pieces because one piece is going to be the long part of the saying, and the second piece is the short part, which is direction. And so I kind of laid that out where I wanted it and made sure everything was going to fit. And here we are. We're going to reverse weed this. And it says, in the waves of life, we find our true direction. And so I used some of the clear contact paper as my transfer tape that I bought at the Dollar Tree. The reason why I like it is because it sticks, but it's not too sticky. I actually tried to do this project at first with the transfer tape from Cricut, and there's that torch paste, and I love this stuff. But I first tried to do it with the transfer tape from Cricut, and it stuck, and I could not get this stencil vinyl off of the transfer tape onto my project. So you're going to take that torch paste and a little applicator, and you're just going to apply a very thin layer and let it dry for 2 or 3 minutes. And then you're going to take off your stencil vinyl, and you're going to take off all the little tiny pieces that are left there as you reversed weeded it. And then you'll see on my right I have an actual heat gun, you know, heavy duty whatnot. On the left I have another heat gun. The left heat gun is more like for drying paint when you want to move a project around a little bit quicker. But if you want this torch paste to actually burn like it's wood burnt, then you need the heavy duty one. And you want to keep that moving along so that you're not burning the wood behind the project and you're just burning where you want to burn. Now there were a few places where I got some of that torch paste where I didn't want it, so I'm just going to take my little heavy duty nail file and I'm going to file off those tiny little areas, and then I'm going to do the same to the north, south, east, north, east, and west. I've already done south. And we are going to just burn that, and you just hold that heat gun, moving it back and forth really quickly over that area until you get the color burn that you want, and then this will be done. I mean, I've tried all kinds of different ways of wood burning besides, you know, actually burning wood, and the torch paste by far is my favorite, and it's the easiest. And I think especially when you use that vinyl from the stencil vinyl from Cricut, that it just is perfect. It turns out amazing. You don't need to Mod Podge anything. You don't need to, you know, try to figure out a way to keep it from going where you don't want it. And it does stencil up. I mean, it does sand off pretty easy if you do get it somewhere you don't want it. And then we're going to get all this glued on in the places where I've set it. And here is the project, and I love, love, love this project. And I think it's an amazing way to showcase all those shells and sand dollars and pieces, and finding our true direction. What do you think? Leave me a comment below. And that brings us to project number 3, and I think this is so sweet. So here's another item that I bought on clearance at Hobby Lobby from their spring sale. It's either last year or year before. And I'm just going to remove all the outer pieces because I'm actually going to use the inside back part, if you will, of this frame. And I am starting out painting it with the white chalk paint, but I decided to add a coat of sandstone after I got this part done because I just didn't think that it looked really good with the shells inside there. So I just painted the inside with that sandstone. And then I placed my 5 little shells, and I took my paint markers and drew stems and leaves. And that's really all there is to this project. And if you wanted to make it as a commemoration from one of your trips, you could, you know, write the location of the trip or the beach you were at, or the date of the vacation, you know, somewhere on the frame. And I think that would just be really sweet. And so once I got everything placed and my lines drawn, I went in with some Mod Podge and some of that shell covered sand that I actually discovered inside some of the shells that I had stored for quite a while. And I put that sand on there just to give us a nice little kind of base for our beginning shell, and got that glued on and glued on the other pieces. And easy peasy, that will do it. And I think this is so stinking cute. Little shell flowers. What do you think? Leave me a comment below. And I love the ability to recycle some of that sand into a project. That was really cool. And that brings us to project number 4, and this is another sweet one. So here's another clearance frame that I bought at Hobby Lobby, and I am just gonna take my heavy duty nail file and sand off the words, and then take some white chalk paint and kind of dry brush it on there, giving it still a rustic appearance. And then I am gonna put my shells in the design to make my butterflies and my flower, and we'll glue that on, and easy peasy, that's this project too. projects don't have to be hard or complicated to be beautiful. And I just love this. Normally, I don't collect more than one of the same kind of shell, but I loved this pink shell when I found it. I believe this was from a trip I took to Florida, um, to Sanibel Island, maybe. The shells they have on Sanibel Island are absolutely amazing. And if you want a good shell beach to go to, that is definitely the one. And here this project is all complete, and I just think it's super, super adorable. And that will bring us to project number 5. As I told you in the beginning, I did kind of pre-choose these shells, and here's another of those clearance Hobby Lobby frames. And I just took off the stickers and sanded down the sticky place, and I am going to mix some sandstone and white chalk paint together and use that as my color. Now over there to the right you see a little heart, and I just cut that out of a piece of paper towel, and I will use that as my reference. Now originally I just started and I was going to paint the inside and just this outside little piece, but I got a little sloppy with my painting, so we're going to take it all the way down to the other frame. And I did like the saying on the other side of this, so I didn't paint it, so that I can actually turn this around and use it as 2 kinds of decor. But I'm going to take a pencil and my little heart that I cut out, and I am going to draw around that so that I have my frame of reference for where my shells are going to be placed. And this is another project that I kind of felt like when I was gluing it together, you know, when you're putting together those Christmas presents and you end up with screws left over that you shouldn't have left over because it's all supposed to go together. Well, that's how this project went for me a little bit. But it's because when I was erasing off the pencil marks, I didn't get my shells where they needed to be. So I'm going to go around, and I just took some of the shells that have, you know, kind of rounded sides, and we're going to use those for the edges, and then kind of fill in with some of the smaller shells for the center, and use the sand dollar for the very center of this project. That sand dollar I found on a beach on Marco Island in Florida, and I just wanted a sweet way to display that sand dollar. And then I found some kind of colorful shells for this one, a little orange one, a little yellow one, and kind of filled in those pieces. And I just think this turns out so sweet. You know, the cool thing about working with these shells is, you know, it's not a perfect thing. It's just a memory thing, I guess. You know, you can look at that and remember where you were and what you were doing. So anyway, I took off a few of the shells, and I erased the pencil line. I couldn't figure out a good way to hide that. The shells weren't going to do it because they don't go all the way to the edge and cover the whole edge. And here's where things already start, you know, changing a little bit from what I had originally planned, but that's okay. Crafting is a practice, not a perfect. And so I'm just gonna put some hot glue on there and just glue the shells down, and just continue along my way until I get all the way to the other side. Now, had I thought about this beforehand, it probably would have been best to take that sand dollar out of the center first and glue that down, because everything else revolves around that sand dollar. But I thought I'd be smart and go around the edges. You can see here I'm taking it off and putting it back on and rearranging, and the hot glue until it really set was
fairly easy to pull these pieces off without breaking them. But once it's set, it wasn't very easy to pull apart, and I did have to pull a few shells off and rearrange them because my heart ended up lopsided for some reason, too much on the left and not enough on the right, or what have you. And you'll see when I place them, I end up overlapping that orange onto the sand dollar, and that's obviously not the way it was meant to go. So we'll just get the last of that heart erased and get rid of all those little eraser pieces, and I'm just gonna kind of fill this all in and get it all glued down, and that will be the end of this project. I really did enjoy taking time to take my shells that have just been, some of them in bags and some of them just sitting on a shelf collecting dust, and be able to make something sweet that I can remember my vacations or just my little shell hunting excursions on the beaches. So which was your favorite project today? Let me know, and let me know if you have any suggestions for 4th of July for next week. You could email me. My email address is in the description box, and you could just let me know, what projects you might have in mind. If you saw something on Pinterest and you're interested in seeing how it could be made, or if there's something you'd like to see me do. So you could see over to the right, I had some leftover pieces, and then I pulled it apart and put it back together and got all the pieces back in there. And I just think it is so lovely.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really did enjoy our time together. Now, since you stuck around until the very end, here is the bonus idea. This was hanging in an Airbnb that I visited, and I just thought this was a super cute way to display all those vacation shells. Also, next week we're going to start working on 4th of July, so get ready. But until then, make it a great day and happy Tuesday!